Greetings, friends. You may not have noticed, but for 2 days in a row now, morning, afternoon, night and evening, a massive attack by Ukrainian drones on the so-called Russian Federation has been underway.
Last night, the Ukrainian armed forces carried out a massive attack on the Moscow region. This is already the fifth one. There it is, the bastard.
These are those, the fierce big ones these are the big fierce ones that fly.
As you can see, the Russians have already learned well how to distinguish Ukrainian drones. The occupiers claim that in these 2 days they have been attacked by almost 500 Ukrainian UAVs, and these attacks have covered 11 regions of the so-called Russia.
Well, now at this very moment they are indeed starting to reach us too, and it's becoming quite clear.
The question is, how can drones from Ukraine fly all the way through Moscow to reach Karimsko?
It's a mystery, of course. We have no idea how something like this could even happen. It is known that last night the Bolkov semiconductor plant in the Oriol region was hit.
Just not to us, please. 8. That's something over there.
As for the results of the attacks on other targets in enemy territory, the information still needs to be clarified. But in my opinion, the most important thing is not which specific plants were hit. No, don't get me wrong, of course it's very important to strike such targets, but there is something else that is just as important.
Several times and at different time slots, the Sheremetyevo, Domodedovo, Zhukovsky, and Vnukovo airports were closed.
Just like on the eve of the May 9th parade, Ukrainian drones paralyzed the operations of many Russian airports, and this is the right tactic. I believe that we need to move to launching drones around the clock, perhaps in smaller numbers, but in such a way that the air raid sirens sound as often as possible wherever there are Russian airports, so that their economy grinds to a halt, so that their logistics come to a standstill. This is a strike that may not be immediately obvious, but it can have very serious consequences for the already troubled economy of the so-called Russian Federation. It's a kind of sanction in itself, and it needs to be continued. And also, friends, in order for Ukraine to become stronger, in order for Russian occupiers to die, we need to keep donating to the current Ruserize campaign. All the details, as always, are in the description of this video. Send your contributions for kamikaze drones for our military. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. That's important too. Some rather interesting things are happening right now in the United States of America. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State of the United States, has been answering tough questions in the Senate for several days in a row. And in the Senate, he was not given a very warm welcome.
You joined forces with President Trump to betray the Ukrainian people and become Vladimir Putin's puppet. I regret voting for you for the position of Secretary of State.
Some Republicans are also beginning to criticize Marco Rubio and more broadly the United States foreign policy regarding the Russian-Ukrainian war. This is telling. Previously, before becoming Secretary of State, Marco Rubio condemned the so-called Russian Federation and said that Russians are war criminals.
Vladimir Putin military violated rules of war, committed war crimes.
Now, however, with the change in the political climate, Marco Rubio has so betrayed his own convictions that he couldn't answer a direct question.
Is Vladimir Putin truly considered a war criminal by international standards?
Well, I think you can look at the incidents that happened there and certainly characterize them as war crimes. But our intention...
And is he a war criminal?
We can't end the war without talking to Mr. Putin.
It's quite simple. Is he a war criminal?
No, that's quite a complicated question for Marco Rubio, considering that the United States of America is currently trying not to harm the so-called Russian Federation, and given that Trump is accommodating all of Vladimir Putin's demands and whims, so Rubio can't answer directly, even though he knows the answer perfectly well.
This person we're negotiating with, Vladimir Putin, is he a war criminal?
But I'm genuinely trying to answer your important question by saying that we are trying to bring this to a conclusive end.
You answered in your own way.
He simply can't say directly that Vladimir Putin is a war criminal, because then he would have to admit that the United States of America is dealing with a war criminal, that the United States of America is trying to negotiate with a war criminal instead of eliminating him.
The president's goal is to bring everything to an end, to end this war. This war does not have a military solution.
The Russian-Ukrainian war does not and cannot have any solution other than a military one. Any other solution is just a temporary freeze, and the United States understands this very well. But in general, it's very easy to say that this war has no military solution when you're not even trying to resolve it militarily, when you're not providing Ukraine with new amounts of aid, when you've blocked the provision of aid to Ukraine. But friends, there is actually something positive as well. Let's try to see at least something everywhere that gives us hope. In the United States Senate, 81 out of 100 senators are already ready to support a bill introducing truly serious sanctions against the so-called Russian Federation. This is a huge indicator.
This shows that Congress is making an effort to impose sanctions, and at a certain point, Congress may lose patience with the pace of reaching a peace agreement and could very likely introduce sanctions that, in some respects, would be even more devastating than what the president could do on his own.
Senators are becoming increasingly impatient, and there is a possibility that they may put this issue to a vote quite soon, even without waiting for the green light from Donald Trump, because Trump himself personally does not want to impose new sanctions against the so-called Russian Federation. So for now, things are not all that bad yet, probably.
So it's clear that Putin is giving you and the president the middle finger. I urge you to defeat Putin on the battlefield. That is the only way to force him to come to the negotiating table.
The Russians are not planning to end the Russian-Ukrainian war. Their strategy is simple and obvious. They are stalling for time, hoping that Trump will distance himself as much as possible from the issue of the Russian-Ukrainian war and will not help Ukraine. At the same time, the Russian occupiers yesterday announced a huge victory.
And now, news evening. Media reports Russian army's forward units have reached border of the Dnipropetrovsk region.
Yesterday, footage did indeed appear on social media showing Russians getting stuck at the administrative border between Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk regions. They got stuck, took a photo with the flag, and then died. That was the situation. That car you saw is a Ukrainian car. Ukrainian soldiers were driving it. They got tangled up in some stretched wire. It's good that the wire was there and they left the car. After that, Russian occupiers came there, stretched out the flag, took photos, and as the temporarily alive traitor of Ukraine and propagandist Yuri Podolyaka claims, they all died while retreating. But still, this was a very important event for Russian propaganda, because as soon as the Russians start to control even a single square meter of the Dnipropetrovsk region, they will start demanding that Ukraine hand over the entire region to the so-called Russian Federation. And this is also a very important fairy tale for them to tell to the West.
This is not just an action to drive in and show a flag. It has a very powerful emotional, I would even say mental impact on Zelensky's allies. They are paying serious attention to all of this.
But for us, this propaganda stunt by the Russian invaders is still a bad thing. So what is actually happening? Heavy fighting continues in the Pokrovsk and Novopavlivka directions. The Russians really are making advances there, and there is actually very little left for them to reach the Dnipropetrovsk region. And given that the Russians have no intention of ending the Russian-Ukrainian war and want to keep fighting, we need to answer the question: what should we do to deprive the Russian invaders of any advantages and stop their advance? There is an answer. We now need to dramatically increase the supply of kamikaze drones to the Ukrainian army. This is extremely important, especially small 7-inch drones, which are mainly used to eliminate Russian infantry. I've been talking about this for a long time, and now I see that this idea is being discussed again in the information space. We need to destroy more of the Russian invaders, specifically their infantry, because if their tank burns, they'll go in an IFV. If the IFV burns, they'll go in a van. If the van burns, they'll go on a motorcycle. If the motorcycle burns, they'll go on foot. Even if they're wounded, they'll keep storming and advancing. So we need to focus primarily on destroying Russian infantry. For that, we need a huge number of drones, friends. Ideally, it would be great to get 140 million FPVs. I think you can guess what for. We have a problem. Friends, we're facing a significant shortage of Ruserizes. We have 144 requests for 4,562 FPVs. That's a lot. That's debts amounting to roughly 80 plus million hryvnias. But even so, we still supply drones to the units, even despite the debts, because we operate on a system where the request is processed first, and then we pay for it afterwards. And this is done so that our units have uninterrupted supplies. This is very important, but the shortage is significant. Once again, I'm asking you for a donation. All the payment details are in the description of this video. And in the last 24 hours, thanks to you, our soldiers have received another 360 new FPVs. Watch these reports until the end. It will be useful.
Wishing you good health. We, the Focus Brigade, thank the Sternenko community in Serhi for anti-aircraft drones to shoot down enemy wings. Together to victory, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. The 28th of September, our 8th Mechanized Brigade thanks the Sternenko community for 30 drones. Together to victory, wishing you good health. We, the servicemen of the Unmanned Aerial Vehicle Interception Platoon of the 35th Marine Brigade, would like to thank the Sternenko community and all concerned Ukrainians who contribute to various fundraisers for providing 20 FPV drones with which we will effectively destroy enemy unmanned reconnaissance aerial vehicles. Together to victory, the soldiers of the 45th Separate Artillery Brigade, named after General Myron Tarnavsky, thank Serhiy Sternenko and his community for providing 20 strike drones. The Defense Forces of the South sincerely thank the Sternenko community's charitable foundation for providing us with 10 interceptor drones, thanks to which enemy scouts will be destroyed even as they approach our cities. Together to victory.
Greetings, friends. Heartfelt greeting to everyone who supports the defense forces of Ukraine, and a special greeting and thanks to the Sternenko community. Special thanks to you, Serhiy, because you are doing tremendous work for us. We depend on the Russories drones. Russories drones are an essential part of our equipment. Without them, we very often find ourselves in quite a critical situation. And the effectiveness, not just the effectiveness, but the scale and scope of our work is significantly reduced without the Russories drones. That's why I sincerely thank you, Serhiy, and all the members of the Sternenko community for your donations, and thanks to you, we receive really awesome drones. What's special is that each new batch of Russories drones is even better than the previous one. And that's considering that they're already excellent to begin with. These are top-notch components, top-notch assembly. They are of the highest quality. Well, I think it's 100 out of 100 in terms of quality. But the manufacturer still manages to make the Russories drones even better. And I want to thank you for investing specifically in these kinds of drones. I'm not standing here alone, I'm here with the mechanic. He called me and said, "You have to come and see the batch that just arrived. We've never seen anything like this before." So tell us yourself, what did you see? What are you holding in your hands? And how is it different from the previous batches of Russories drones?
The main difference is that they better.
Always better. That's a consistent story. Each batch is better than the last.
Yeah, we opened up these Russories drones and we were just blown away by them because they're made of aluminum. You can see for yourself. Drones like these, well, our enemies have used them against us, and until now we didn't have anything quite like this. It's really cool that now here in Ukraine we can already make this ourselves. First of all, it's more powerful. Its frame doesn't bend. It's more stable. What I just noticed while I was standing here looking at it is that they've used higher quality components, specifically a more powerful SC board. Well, I can understand why they started using this particular one for this frame.
Yeah, the most important thing is the connection. For us, well, the most important thing is always the connection, because higher quality and more efficient work is achieved with long-range communication. The developers did a great job here because they installed powerful receivers and in the right frequency range too. Now, we'll have to buy transmitters for that frequency range, but that's another story. But compared to our other expenses, that's just pennies. And we'd rather buy, basically, how many of these transmitters do we need? 2 per crew. 2 per crew, yes. So it's not expensive. And honestly, for drones like these, I'm ready to do whatever it takes. Honestly, I have no more words because, well, every new batch just gets better and better. They keep adding something new, but they do their job. They're really high quality. And we like that every time they come out, it's quality. I just recorded a video for the FPV platoon commander. We showed it to him. He hadn't seen it yet. He hasn't even touched them yet. And now he's going to share this video among our crew commanders and operators. I just can't imagine the reaction from the guys who work with FPV drones destroying the enemy. For them, it's just like a fairy tale. So, Serhiy, thank you so much. Dear Sternenko community, thank you sincerely for the work you do, for standing with the defense forces of Ukraine. And, oh, I'm so happy right now, honestly. Together to victory, friends.
And glory to Ukraine. Our country is in a difficult situation right now. This is no secret, especially when it comes to relations with the United States of America. But we have no other options. We must continue to fight and do everything we can to support the security and defense forces of Ukraine.